And here are Russ and Cathy again. A little chat, a little curling chat. Boy, it never a dull moment this season. I remember the old years. It was just like we were talking about who won and who lost, and now it
Yeah.
seems like we're talking about more stuff off ice than on the ice. And of course, the latest thing is that Carly Burgess has left Chelsea Carey's team and gone to play with Carrie Anerson. And there's a lot of stuff that goes back and forth with this one, Cathy. What was your impression when you heard about this move? And maybe you can kind of unravel a little bit for us.
Well, I think that the first thing, Bob, is that there's been so many articles talking about how, the team lost their Scotties berth and their Olympic trials berth. They lost their Scotties berth, but that Olympic trials berth was gone. You need to have 3 of 4 in order to keep the berth. Emily didn't want to play this year, but she agreed to play the minimum amount of games to keep the team in the Scotties and to keep her funding. But she was clear she wasn't playing next year. So as soon as she said that, they didn't have enough players. So there is absolute truth that the team is now stuck because they can't play provincials and they won't be in the Scotties, but that berth was gone. In all of the changes this year, the one team I just really want to exclude is Carrie Anerson. I mean, this is not a team that's trying to fire people. They're just trying to have 4 bodies on the ice, and it's been really difficult.
Ralph, so what's your take on? I mean, we've seen a lot of movement on the men's side, obviously, this year. It's like you need a program to figure out who's on what team. But with the women's team, we haven't really seen it. And I don't know if it's fair or not, but it just seems, looking at some of the social media comments, that there were some pretty harsh comments about this move, calling her selfish but as Cathy's explained, it's not quite all that way it's wrapped up to be. But what's your take on this move?
With Carly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the you do what you got to do, right? That's the problem nowadays. It's the Olympics. It's a big carrot. Back 100 years ago, it was you played with 4 friends, and that's just changed. It's just we got to get over it. That's the way it is now. The team was really struggling. Cathy would know better than I would, but they were going nowhere fast. And Carly's such an exceptional talent, and she's the future of her sport. And, you could feel bad for the other guys, but that seems to be the way it is nowadays. And Cathy touched on Carrie Anerson. We need a program for who's playing with who. Carrie needs a program with who's playing with her. Yeah. I had to write it down, Cathy. On that team, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got Carrie Anerson, Val Sweeting, Shannon Burchard, hopefully, Brienne Harris, hopefully. And that's the regular squad. In the meantime, they picked up Karwacki, they picked up Burgess, and I heard from sources that Lenentine is now going to be their 5th at the Scotties.
Yeah.
So I've got a total of 7 people on that team.
Cathy, I want to ask you something here. Are the women's change? Is this change because it's a women's team getting a little unfair criticism compared to the men? I know that's a sexist thing, or it seems like it, but it just seems, I mean, I go back to Jennifer Jones and Cathy Overton and all that.
Yes.
And it just seems like, when we have changes in the men's, it doesn't seem as shocking as this one does in the women's side. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think maybe because it's the first time we've seen that in the women this year. So far, the revolving door has been on men kicking out people leaving. And so you start to get a little hardened to it. But because it's the first time in women's, I think that's it. I also think that generally speaking, the other men curlers have been very complacent about the changes, going, it could be a scapegoat, and they just move on. Whereas I feel that women as a gender, we tend to take things a little more personally.
Russ, there's been some talk. Curling Canada's suggesting maybe they'll have you have a cutoff, but when you can like a trade deadline kind of thing, the cutoff date that you can't move anybody after that. I mean, what do you think of that? It seems a little extreme, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And they're trying to think of all the, you're flying by the seat of your pants if you're Curling Canada here right now. I really wonder if designating teams a year in advance to get to the Scotties and the Brier was a good idea. I understand. I came back from the Olympics absolutely exhausted. It was too close together. We pushed for a bigger period of time between the Canadian Championship and the Olympics, or the Canadian Championship and the Worlds. They just did that in the mixed doubles for Glant and Peterman, and kudos to them, 10-0. But you really don't know a year out what's going to happen. And Chelsea Carey's team's a great example.
Yeah.
You came from second best, and if Jennifer Jones gets around the guard or around the rock and the rings in the 10th end of the Scotties final, she wins the Scotties. She was one shot away from winning the Scotties. Now this team doesn't curl.
Yeah.
So things can change in a big hurry. So I'm old school. You start fresh. Everybody starts at square one, not halfway through or all the way to the provincials, and you earn your way to the Brier. You earn your way for a Purple Heart or a Scotties title, and then you've got the best teams that are playing the very best at that period of time.
All right, speaking of best teams, we know Rachel Holman is the best team in women's curling around the world right now. I mean, just continuing on this run. She's the favorite going into the Scotties. Who is the favorite on the men's side going into the Brier? Let's start with you, Russ.
Well, I had to make a list there too. You've got. I was picking on Gautier at our last podcast, and who's going to be the favorite of the Brier? Gautier, right? They're going to figure it out. They're 3-0 right now in the Bonspiel out west. But I think you're really looking at McEwen, possibly Crothers. You've got, I don't think Cooey's going to make it this year, but you've got the old regulars in with Jacobs and Dunstone, and I'd slide Epping in there as a fifth. Those five guys, and I'm telling you, at this point in time, you got to pick a coin. You really do. It's really close. You get to the playoffs. Gushu's there. Yeah, you're leaning towards Gautier, but does he make the playoffs if there's five great teams?
Cathy?
I think the team that likes each other the most right now has the best shot, and that's Team Mike McEwen. You can see a lot of talent out there in men's curling, but there's a lot of teams that just don't like each other, and it is evident. But they are doing what they need to do because they feel that's the team that has the talent. But that old Michael Jordan quote, the talent wins games, but it is team chemistry and intelligence that wins championships. And I think that the Brier is going to demonstrate that in spades. I think it did that at the mixed doubles for sure. I also think that Dunstone is a unique situation. A lot of the teams that made changes have not done particularly well or not better than they did with their teams. Dunstone's different because you've got some magic with the Harnden brothers. You've got now the best or one of the best front end sweeping combos that you have. And you've got an EJ who has found his passion for the game again, qualified through A in Lloydminster. And so I think that's a team to really watch out for too.
Absolutely.
I think that Epping team is a good one as well. That the underdogs. By the way, they're playing in that Bonspiel down in Arizona, and they won 8-0 in 3 ends. So right. That's pretty impressive.
The next game, I think they won 6-1 in 3 ends.
Okay, I'm down here, and I just want to put it out there that it may not be a focus of a lot of teams down here. They walk in with their golf clubs, so
it's kind of nice though when you can kind of just end your game quickly and then get out to the golf course.
Absolutely.
Let's switch gears a little bit. We've had a lot of discussion on broomgate and some of the stuff that's been going on with his brooms, and it seems that they may have figured things out, but we've got a new wave of brooms. And Russ, you've sort of got some information. Why don't you tell us about, maybe you can help us understand broomgate first for those who aren't quite up on it, but I know it's about the density of the foam at the end of the brush.
Yeah, and I've got to throw a flag here for World Curling. They dropped the ball here. At the end of the last year's curling season in April, or I don't know when it was after the season was over, the trophies are handed out, the medals are given out, the World Championships, the whole bit, all those different events. They decide that 2 of the company's brooms are illegal. Nobody caught that, Bob. You know, you come from the golf industry, you just think that one out.
Yeah.
So then instead of, it's hard to go back. I don't blame them to go back and say, oh, by the way, you shouldn't have won that medal. I'm not picking any particular teams. I don't want to get into it. But they decide to move the goalposts and allow the standards to meet the 2 brooms that didn't meet the standards. So then the other companies that met the standards to compete and sell broom heads have to level the playing field. So they had to go out and reinvent the toolbox and come out with, in this case, a firmer foam. And now one of those companies is saying that one of the companies that didn't conform said, well, the guys that have upped their game this year, we have to up our game again. And it's got to the point that who's playing with what. And I know of people, I'm not going to mention names, that are using their sponsor's handle and the
Absolutely.
competitor's head.
Right.
So
Just
we've got a problem here, Bob. And you've got to standardize the heads. And Cathy, you'll remember in Broomgate 101, World Curling could not make a decision on these heads before they standardized the material. Jill Officer, who my daughter was in the event at Scotties, Jill Officer, who was playing, got everybody together the night before the Scotties started and said, "Look, let's have a gentleman's agreement and not use these hair brooms that are destroying the sport." And all the curlers complied. And I've even heard this weekend from my brother that one of the teams was basically backed into the corner and accused of cheating.
Yeah.
It's not the curlers that are cheating. I want to get that out there. Cathy can back me up. It's not the curlers that are cheating. It's not the companies that are cheating. It's that they keep moving the goalposts, and they got to come up with a standardized head. Aaron Judge cannot walk out on the Yankee field with an aluminum bat.
no.
Thank goodness.
And Bob, you know this better than anybody. That's golf's favorite line is that you've got to protect the integrity of the field.
Yeah.
World curling isn't doing that.
It's hard. I know they've had some trouble trying to find people who can test these things, but what they do in golf is, as drivers go along as through the year, the face gets a little hotter, and so they test them before they tee off. In certain cases, at the Open Championship, I remember Corey Connors had a driver that if he had used it, he would have been disqualified, but they do it before the fact. I'm not sure how you do it here. Cathy, go ahead, Russ.
But they do it. That's the key difference.
No, they do. And I think back to the Scotties and the Brier year where the officials would stand in the hallway and they would just go, you, and you. And they would take off the head and they would look at what people were putting underneath, because during the season, some people had put aluminum foil to heat up the ice. There's so much moral hazard in sweeping. And I feel like we're at a junction that World Curling Federation and all the curling federations, including our own, need to just focus more on the brushing. We see striping going on. There's no rule that says you can't do that, but the whole objective of sweeping is not to slow down a stone.
Right.
And if you're slowing it down, is there a rule that says you can't? Well, there certainly should be. And the broom heads come under that, because it's the first time since 2016 that teams really feel that we're back to an unlevel playing field, and that's just wrong.
Well, I had one competitor say to me, "I'm bringing a knife to a gunfight."
Yeah.
And I feel so bad for the players, because if somebody unusual wins an event, they're going to go, "Oh my God,
what were they using?
He cheated." They're not cheating. They're just making shots. And we got to standardize it. We got to standardize it yesterday. We've already got our playdown started in all the different genders and all the different events and seniors and everything. And we picked our team to go to the Olympics, hopefully, for mixed doubles. What happens if the rules change with these heads?
Yeah.
Like you put the competitors in an awful position, and my vote is standardize it yesterday.
I remember the good old days when all we had to worry about was like banning inverted corn brooms. And
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes way back, right? So
it does.
let's just touch on a couple more topics before we go. And one is the mixed doubles. You guys have both mentioned it so far in this con. What did you think of it? And are we happy with Peterman Gallant? I thought they were the class of the field. We had them on a podcast here just a little while before they went. But it sure seems like this discipline is really picking up speed. Cathy?
I thought the quality of play was really, really good. And when it got to the finals, I thought, Canada is in such a great position, regardless of team. But it's a great example in my mind if you were going to put a rock in the hands of any woman in the world, you would want it to be Rachel Homan. And Brendan Gautier is no slouch, but the team chemistry of a husband and wife team that have played for a long time, that unequivocal, they have my back, is wonderful to watch. I do think Canadians shouldn't assume it's an automatic gimme. The world has been playing mixed doubles long before Canada really invested a lot of our time and energy. And so It's tough, but I love the fact that they are the team that is going to be fighting for their Olympic life. You wouldn't want to have anybody else do that, but and I couldn't imagine a better duo. I think it's awesome.
Russ?
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I think if you remember, we picked that team to win along with the Lots, and they didn't quite make the playoffs, but they were close. I think the difference, Cathy, is if you compare it to Holman and Botcher, the shot making out of the hack for those two is just unbelievable. But I think the slight advantage of mixed doubles, if you're trying to get by a guard by half an inch and make an angle freeze, when that rock's halfway down the sheet, somebody like Gallant knows exactly where it's going, maybe better than Botcher.
Yeah.
Right. That's not his forte yet. He's working on it, but I think that's what makes the difference. You know, you can throw a perfect rock and ruin it by the time 24 seconds later. So I think they've got an unbelievable chance. But Cathy's dead right. The field at the world level is just nuts.
Yeah, Canada's never won the World Championships at the mixed doubles, so we'll hopefully see those two going for their first. And then finally, just to wrap up, what do we think so far of the Grand Slam? It's been an interesting year, been kind of a fun year. Nick Sulsky and his team have taken it over, and they've tried to sort of make some changes, and they aren't afraid to try things, including karaoke, for better or worse. But Cathy, what do you think of it so far?
You know what? I think it's great for curling. It's unique right now that Canadians have the benefit of being able to go to these events. I know that there is a move to move these slams offshore around the world, and other countries will get what we have right now. But to be able to go and see and have some personality in our sport, it's just everything they try is really interesting. Even if they're trying rules that, we talked about the whole double blank and you lose, and we're kind of both Russ and I are of the opinion that the blanks aren't the problem with the game right now. I love the fact that there is like a testing ground that the players are up for those kinds of things. It adds personality, and I think that's a good thing.
Russ, last word to you.
I've heard a rumor that I love exactly what Cathy's saying. It's great to try all this stuff. Yeah, a lot of this, some of these things we've tried before. And the latest rumor I heard is they want to go down south for one. They want to do a skills competition, which we did at the Scotties and Brier for years. They want to do an all-star team, which we've done with the Everest, and TSN did it for quite a few years out west. But just because we've tried them before doesn't mean they weren't bad ideas. And I kudos. I think all these ideas can freshen up the sport.
Well, as we're taping this, the next Grand Slam is just a few days away. So we'll be watching the action in Guelph. And Cathy, Russ, as always, great to chat.
Nice seeing you, Bob.